Today we're going to be talking again about the Paleo Hebrew. We've mentioned this in previous teachings, so we're going to go through the Aleph Beit, show you those particular word concepts that were behind the Paleo Hebrew. So let's jump into this because I want to have plenty of time to get to Genesis chapter 1, verses 1 and 2. Now what I have done is on the top part of the board here, I have written out the letter with the modern day writing of that particular letter. And then I've also written the Paleo Hebrew of how it would have looked in those times. So let's talk just a second to get on the same page about Paleo Hebrew. There's a plethora of information about Paleo Hebrew out there. I want to keep it simple. I believe that to me is the best thing. So in 2005, they were doing some digs in Israel, of course, always doing archaeological digs. And in 2005, 16 years ago, at Tel Zait. Tel Zait was in the Judean wilderness, southwest of Jerusalem. So this puts us beyond Jericho or Jericho, and it was about 30 miles outside of Jerusalem in the Judean wilderness at Tel Zait. They found an ancient stone, and today they have named it the Zait stone, which comes from that particular Tel, that had hieroglyphics, which dated back to about 1500 to 1200 BCE, before the Common Era, meaning that this would have put the Israelites in the land in that time, but they didn't have the written language. They had the Paleo Hebrew because it was on this stone. And so each of these symbols has a concept behind it. And so in those times, even though there was a known language, there wasn't a written language. It was written concepts through the Paleo Hebrew. And so the people would learn the concept behind a particular symbol, and then they could decipher the message from that. As we study, most of our interpretation of Scripture today, unless you have dug deeper into your studies, is from a Western concept. In other words, we could take the word Elohim, which is the word for God. And we understand God, of course, is our one true God. But if you take that into the Hebrew, Elohim is plural, meaning gods. And it could be a collective group of gods. But then you take it even further into the Hebrew, and we understand that it's like one cluster of grapes. So there's just one, but there are many grapes attached to that cluster. And so we understand that God is one, and yet he is many or multi-dimensional, if you want to look at it like that. But then today, in a few minutes, I'm going to take it into the Paleo Hebrew, which is takes it even a deeper level of study. So when the rabbis say there are 72 layers to each phrase in a scripture, you can go to the highest dimension, you can go to the deepest dimension, and through portal after portal and opening after opening, and understand that particular scripture will build itself line upon line and become something greater for us to understand. So as we go through this today, we would say, why Paleo Hebrew? And again, it's because we can tell a much greater story than just reading a verse that says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the faces of the water. When we read this in our Western culture, we kind of gloss over the meat of this very beginning in the beginning, not at the beginning, but in the beginning. And so we're going to break this down and hopefully in just a few moments understand the setup for Genesis 1, 1, and 2 is a much greater dimension than what we've ever understood.